I'd start with my opening statement. I want to thank Chairman Goodlatte for supporting the Special House Judiciary Committee Task Force on Executive Overreach, which will examine the problem of Congress's gradual ceding of legislative power to other parts of the federal government and the President's taking additional legislative powers even beyond that. This is much more than a mundane process problem. It's a tragic result for individual rights and liberties. Policies imposed by federal agencies are crafted by unelected bureaucrats. Because those bureaucrats don't have to answer to the American citizens over the course of regular elections, they have little understanding of the desires and concerns of those Americans. And so they produce policies that, for example, make energy more expensive, take people's property through federal regulations, drive down wages through lawless amnesty programs, and restrict communications on the internet. The founders insisted on keeping policymaking in the hands of regularly elected congressional representatives precisely to avoid these sorts of policy catastrophes. As the former historian of the House of Representatives, Robert V. Rimini, has written, the framers of the Constitution were absolutely committed to the belief that a representative body accountable to its constituents was the surest means of protecting liberty and individual rights. So anxious were they to affirm legislative supremacy in the new government that they failed to flesh out the executive and judicial departments in the Constitution, leaving the task to Congress and thereby assuring that the legislature would retain control of the structure and authority of both those branches of government. And within that system of legislative supremacy, the House of Representatives was to serve a unique role. Alone among all federal institutions, the House has consisted solely of those duly elected by the people. Further, the Constitution grants the House the exclusive power to originate all legislation for raising revenue. The House of Representatives is the most regularly elected body in the federal government. In Federalist 39, James Madison wrote, the House of Representatives is elected immediately by the great body of the people. As such, the House of Representatives will derive its powers from the people of America. In Federalist 52, Madison elaborated, as it is essential to liberty that the government in general should have a common interest with the people, so it is particularly essential that the House should have an immediate dependence on and an intimate sympathy with the people. Frequent elections are unquestionably the only policy by which this dependence and sympathy can be effectually secured. That's James Madison. In this age of hyperpartisanship, when more and more attention is paid to political results and less to constitutional means, we tend to lose sight of why the founders created the system that they did. Focus not on results, but on process and a separation of powers. Under that system of a separation of powers, each branch of the federal government was expected to protect its own constitutional powers such that no single branch accrued power it wasn't allocated by the Constitution. The founders understood that individuals were free in direct proportion to each branch of the federal government staying strictly within its own bounds, and the most important lane was the legislative lane, a narrow road of strictly enumerated powers ridden by a Congress consisted of duly elected representatives, with the House of Representatives, the body most regularly elected, and with special powers over the origination of revenue bills, in the driver's seat. But today, many legislative and budget powers have been ceded to presidents and the executive branch through statutes, delegating legislative responsibility to federal regulatory agencies composed of unelected people, and statutes mandating automatic and increased spending on certain programs administered by the executive branch. Other legislative powers have simply been seized by presidents who exercise sheer will to trump the rule of law. Whatever the means of the loss of legislative power by Congress, it's imperative that Congress reclaim it, not simply for its own sake, but because without it, individual rights and liberties cannot flourish as the founders intended. It's long been my view that the framers of our Constitution structured the three branches of government in a fashion that, with as bright a lines as they could draw between each three branches of government, understanding, though, that the language could not precisely define the distinctions between the Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 authorities within the Constitution. But they did rely on human nature, and they believed that each branch of government would jealously protect the powers granted to it in the Constitution, and there would be a static tension that would be achieved between the three branches of government. I believe that has shifted over the years, and we're here to address this in this task force. And again, I thank Chairman Goodlatte for organizing this task force, and I would recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cohen, for his opening statement.